Good morning, everybody. I'm so sorry that I'm greeting you with such a husky voice. It is the Irish lilt, but it's also a sign of, unfortunately, sharing some wine with the speakers until rather late last night. So it's remarkable that the spelling is correct on these. You are all incredibly welcome back to Dublin. I am really, really curious to know, just a quick show of hands, how many people are here for the second time? That is amazing. I'm delighted to have you back. I hope you enjoy the experience over the next 2 days. Sorry about the confusion with the sofas this morning. I'm one of these people who just can't make my mind up. So 1 minute it was a chair, then I thought, no, I prefer a sofa. So God bless the poor facility. They're very good at responding to my whims. But we're all good now, so let's get stuck in. I'm going to try and do short introductions for the speakers for this panel. When I was putting this panel together, I had spent, obviously, the 12 months since MoJoCon 1 looking for some of the best stories that proved that mobile journalism has a future and it's not just a fad. Because a lot of the time, some of you may have experienced this, the risk is that hardcore engineers, particularly in broadcasting, will sort of say, look, it's fine for breaking news or if we rip it off YouTube, but we're not going to actually make broadcast content with these devices. I think the most interesting thing that has happened in the 12 months since MoJoCon 1 is that now effectively both iOS and Android are capable of 4K production. You can shoot, you can edit, and you can share your content in 4K via YouTube. This is a pretty remarkable state for MoJo. I think it really is truly an evolution. So the 6 speakers that we've lined up for you, they may not all be shooting in 4K just yet. There are other issues which will come up in the tool session later on. It's not all perfect just yet, but anyway. The first person I would like to welcome to the stage is a man who I've been following on Twitter for actually a number of years. He is a former managing editor for KRIV Houston, which is a Fox network news. He left relatively recently and has now set up his own business, MoJo Navigator. So will you please put your hands together for founder and CEO of MoJo Navigator, Geoff Roth. Geoffrey.
Morning, everybody. Everyone can hear me? And everyone can see? Okay, we're good. So, as Glenn said, I've been an evil manager in newsrooms for many years, mainly working for Fox. And then a couple months ago, I decided to start my own company. And if there's a MoJoCon 3, Glenn, I want to do a session called How to Throw Security Out the Window, Make Your Spouse Very Nervous, and Start Your Own Company. Because all those things happened the last couple months. But what I'm going to talk to you about is an opportunity I was given a couple of years ago to take this philosophical question of, if you were going to start a news department in the 21st century, what would you do? So, welcome to the 21st century. Fox bought a station in Charlotte, North Carolina that did not have a news department. And so a group of people were brought together. I was the news guy. We had a general manager who was in charge of the whole station, a chief engineer, a marketing person, and we were asked to build a newsroom from scratch. So when I first got here, that's what the newsroom looked like. It was a giant construction zone. So the first thing we needed to do was come up with a philosophy. What are we going to do? And, oh, there we go. So we came up with some goals. Obviously, we wanted to be multi-platform. We weren't just going to do stuff for television. We were going to build a website. We were going to have social media platforms. So everything was geared towards doing things not just for what was going on the TV screen. We were going to be IP-based. We weren't going to be spending millions of dollars on microwave trucks and satellite trucks. Everything was going to be done through the internet. We wanted to be regional. Our competitors in the market pretty much focused in just on the main part of Charlotte, and we wanted to kind of cover the hinterlands as well. And we wanted to be relevant, which doesn't have a lot to do with MoJo, more journalistic philosophy. We weren't going to be chasing a lot of fires and crime. We were going to actually do stories that people cared about. Oh, sorry, I went through too many things. This isn't changing the way I thought it was. Okay, let's try this one more time. There we go. So we had our construction zone days. We did everything from lay cable that we cemented over, built a lighting grid, bought equipment, and slowly this thing started coming together. Some days were a little more interesting than others. I showed up one day to do some work, and everybody was wearing masks. So I went, I think I'm going to go home and do stuff from home that day. And then, of course, there were the jobs. If you look at this, you can see some of the jobs were traditional, audio person, directors, but part of our mantra was everybody needed to know how to do everything. I've always thought that newsrooms were some of the most inefficient workplaces in the world. The whole point of what we're supposed to be doing is going out, gathering information, processing information, and telling stories. I worked in news departments where half the people never left the building. And we didn't want that in this new 21st century newsroom. We wanted more people outside doing the work than inside kind of processing things. So as we hired people, pretty much everybody had a title, and then also added onto it was digital journalist, or we call them DJs for short. So if someone was on the assignment desk, it was an assignment editor, but we needed them to go out and do a story, they could pick up a camera, they could go out, and they could become a reporter. So pretty much everyone was a DJ. And you notice there's a lot of jobs up there that have bureau by them. I'll get to that in a little bit, because part of what we wanted to do was not have everybody focused in on having to come into the television station all the time. Eventually, we got to where we wanted to be, and we had our happy digital journalist with her mobile journalism kits. And even though this isn't really related to MoJo, part of what our philosophy was that it wasn't going to be the traditional anchor sitting behind a desk, talking on high to people. Our studio was our newsroom. So if we needed to do something on the web, or we needed to quickly get something on the air, the newsroom and the studio were all merged together. It was kind of focused around these two big touchscreen television sets. By the way, that room is the same room that was in that first slide after the end product was put together. So what's different about this picture? How does this not look like a typical old newsroom? Down in the corner there, that was the only desktop computer in the entire newsroom. And that was mainly used by the show producer to put the newscast together. Everybody else was mobile. They had laptops, they had iPhones. Some of the reporters also had these little small JVC cameras. But basically, when you came into work, you brought your work with you. And when you left, you packed up all your stuff. And if you needed to go cover something and you were at home, you had everything you needed. You had your laptop computer, you had your iPhone. You could basically do anything from anywhere. So people just came in and plugged in their laptops into little workstations, and we had some phones. But other than that, nothing was anchored down. That's part of the whole philosophy of the mobile newsroom. What's different about this picture? You might look at that and go, oh, they're looking at Twitter, they're doing something on social media. Those were two of my digital journalists, and they were editing their stories for the day. They were two of the very few that day that were probably actually at the station. Everybody else was out in the field. But this is how we worked. It was very efficient. Everybody could do pretty much anything they wanted to do at any time of the day or night. The other thing, and I alluded to this a little bit before, was we wanted to have a decentralized newsroom. Again, getting back to this efficiency, how many hours of a day, if you work in a newsroom, do you waste driving from your home to the station, going from the station out to your news story, coming back to the station? You could eat up half your day just traveling. We wanted to eliminate that, but we also wanted people to live in the communities that they covered. So we started out with 6 bureaus around Charlotte in the center, but there were all these towns in the surrounding areas, and the bureau people worked out of their homes. They lived in the communities they covered. And that was one of the distinctive things about what we've been doing there, is that they really were able to get the kinds of stories that our competitors in the market weren't getting. One of my proudest moments was, if you see up in the corner, there's this town of Hickory, kind of a economically depressed area. We had a reporter that lived there and was doing really meaningful stories about what was happening in that community. And I went up there one day to meet with a reporter and to just meet some civic leaders there. And the mayor of the town came up to me and said, "We started watching you guys because you're covering stuff we care about. The other news organizations in Charlotte only come up here when someone shoots somebody." And that's typical of a lot of U.S. local newsrooms. You cover what you hear on the police scanner. So not only were we being more efficient, but we were making a difference editorially as well. A lot of stations used to have bureaus, and they started shutting them down because they were so expensive. You had to have a microwave truck, you had to have a couple people, you had to have an office. It could add up to millions of dollars worth of equipment and a lot of labor-intensive salaries. Now it's kind of going back in that direction because it's so cheap to do. I really believe that MoJo is going to be embraced by local television news organizations in the United States, not necessarily because of the great journalism you can do with it, but because of the economy of it. You can do it very inexpensively and still create quality product. So I want to show you a few examples of some stuff that we did, and some of this is from Charlotte, and then some of it, after they had me build this culture in Charlotte, they sent me back to Houston to try and change a culture instead of create a culture. That was a lot harder. Bringing people in who knew what we were doing from the very start, that was easy. The hard part was just getting everything together and training people. But when I went back to a news organization that was used to doing stuff the old way, it was a little more difficult to convince people, but it started happening. So the first thing that we discovered was unique storytelling. The example I'm going to show you, and these aren't the whole stories because I don't have a lot of time. In fact, it looks like I'm starting to run out of time. The storytelling, this is a story about a group of undocumented high school students who went on a 9-day walk from Charlotte to Raleigh, which is the state capital, to convince lawmakers to give them what's known as in-state tuition. All the other stations in town did a little story as they walked off to this thing. Our station decided to take a MoJo reporter and do the 9-day walk with them and do profile stories of them and follow them on Twitter and do all this social media stuff. So this is just a short example of what we did.
Hey Barbara, yeah, as you can probably tell from my face, I'm a little bit exhausted, and the whole group is, really. I mean, we've been getting about 5-6 hours of sleep.
Right, I'm being told to wrap up, so I'm going to go through this very quickly. So she did, a whole profile. That was done live just off of an iPhone. Weather is another thing we decided that we found was real convenient for MoJo. In Houston, there's lots of flooding. It's very hard to get places. You can't get microwave trucks in. This was a state park that had been flooded out, and while nobody else could get there, our MoJo guy ferried himself in and sent this report
Well, if you're going to build a park on a bend of Brazos River, as in Brazos Bend State Park, you're going to have to know when it's swollen and it's overflowing its banks. It's going to cause you some problems. And here's
So that's another example. And then again, getting back to the efficiency part. We sent a reporter. All the stations covered this delegation that went to Berlin to look at this project as we were trying to figure out what to do with our Astrodome in Houston. Everyone else sent 3 people and spent tens of thousands of dollars on satellite time. We sent one guy with a MoJo kit and did better storytelling than them, literally at a quarter of the cost.
Hey everybody, here we go. We have left Berlin, taking the hour-long train ride along the flower-lined German countryside on our way to Brandenburg and the Tropical Islands Resort.
So, that all shot and edited on an iPhone, sent back over the internet. I apologize if there's anyone from Google here, but we tried a lot of stuff. Not everything worked. We tried Google Glass. That didn't quite do what we wanted it to do, but experimenting is good even if things fail. So quickly to wrap it up, the MoJo newsroom, it's more efficient, less costly, which the bean counters love. You can go live from anywhere very cheaply, and to me, you can do better storytelling. Our successes, we created a 21st century newsroom. We developed acceptance of MoJo. Journalism actually, I think, was placed above technology because we could do so much stuff because the technology was cheap and it was easier to use. And we started spreading it to other newsrooms in the company. Our challenges, still a lot of people say it's not professional. even though most people can't tell the difference between what's shot on an iPhone and what's shot on a much more expensive camera. There were safety issues sometimes when people were out doing stuff just on their own. The person behind that camera is smiling about the difference in the video. Some photographers thought I was the devil. Sports is still a tough thing to do with MoJo, and so we didn't do it very often. And if there isn't a champion in the newsroom supporting what you're doing, you tend to see backslide of going back to what people are used to. This has nothing to do with MoJo, but just a suggestion, if you ever decide you are going to do a startup, make sure you find a really good drink that you like. This was called the Some Pig. It was Southern Scotch with bacon drippings in it. Now, I love this drink because it symbolized what we were doing in Charlotte. The concept sounded really weird to a lot of people, but in the end, it was a really, really good thing. Thank you very much. If anybody has any questions down the road, there's my contact info. And sorry that I ran long.
Okay, so in case anyone is wondering why am I putting the skids on the speaker so fast, if this is your first MoJoCon, you might find that a little bit strange and think everyone's being just rushed off the stage as fast as possible. The whole ethos of the conference is a little bit different to traditional. So rather than having 12 speakers who speak for an hour each, we want people to almost do a pitch. And if it piques your interest, if it's something you think, geez, I'd love to know more about that story, then reach out to the speaker, okay? So it's a level tier. The speakers are here. You can contact them through the app. We've put a few promos around the place to remind you to download the app. I've had one tweet so far saying they can't connect on Wi-Fi, which is not bad given at this stage last